Hi, it's Rob from the Russian Vulcan. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint Accursed Cultists. If you like the channel and you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon page is linked below. Now on to the video. So this is the miniature that we're going to be working on for this video. It's one of the three larger Accursed Cultists with the demon bursting out of the skin of the human. Quite hideous, but really good fun to paint. The first colour we're going to use is Citadel Cantor Blue. I'm going to use this to do the webbing on each of the wings. So you've got the webbing on the large wing that's poking out the back, and then where you've got that little crazy demon hand that's poking out the other side. It's got a few little bits of web on there as well, so I'm doing that the same colour as this webbing. Next piece of footage is missing, which is the bulk of the demon's flesh. We're painting in Citadel Ahriman Blue, so give that skin a good coat of Ahriman Blue, and then we can move on to the next colour, which is going to be Citadel Mephiston Red. I'm going to use this to do the tabard that the remains of the human cultist is wearing. Also going to use it to do the inside of the mouth. Really quick layer here, it's going to be Citadel Pink Horror. I'm going to use this just to do the demon's tongue. A little bit of Citadel Retributor Armour just to do those two gold stars. There's one on the front here, one hanging from the kind of chain at the back, I think it is. I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Bugman's Glow to paint the skin of the cultist. Now obviously there's loads of different skin tones you can use for this, so whichever skin tone you want to use for your cultist, you can crack on with that. Next up, we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Rakarth Flesh. This is going to be to do the hoof, the claws, those weird insect-like spindly legs, the hair of the cultist, all the teeth, the little bone spurs and things like that, and those really long finger and toenails that the cultist seems to have developed. So another quick one, a little bit of Citadel Iron Hand Steel. It's just to do a couple of the little nail heads. You've got one holding that little scroll to the arm. You've also got the chain around the waist, and you've got two little bolts on the chest holding that red tabard to the cultist's remains. Next up, we're going to use Citadel Druchii Violet. This is going to be used to do all of the red and also all of the skin of the cultist. I don't usually like doing the skin with the purple hint like to do with the kind of demon colours, but quite a lot of people do, so we're going to go with that one. Once I've finished all my cultists, you'll see a few little varieties of different skin tones that I'm using, but for the purpose of this, we'll just use the Druchii Violet on the Bugman's Glow. Next, it's Citadel Nuln Oil. I'm going to use this just to do the little metal bolts, so again, another really quick layer here. Probably the longest shade layer that we're going to do is Citadel Drakenhof Nightshade, and that is going to be to do all of the demon's skin. That's including the webbing on the wings too. So give them a nice coat of Drakenhof Nightshade. Now we can move on to the next colour. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Agrax Earthshade. That is just going to be to shade the gold stars. Tiny little bit of Citadel Snakebite Leather here. That is going to be to do the strings holding on that gold star on the back of the tabard there. Now Citadel Seraphim Sepia. Using this to do the bone colours on the claws, those weird spindly legs, the different areas that we've used Citadel Rakarth Flesh on. Now a little bit of Citadel Cassandora Yellow. That's going to be to do the hair. Give that a quick coating, and that's all done. Okay, back to the skin again. We're going to start with Citadel Bugman's Glow. When you're reapplying this, you want to think about where the light is hitting the skin. So the surfaces that are going to be getting more light, you will be doing the Bugman's Glow on and leaving the shade in the recesses and in sort of the underside of like the hands, any bits of legs that might be shaded. If you want on those underside bits, you could add the Bugman's Glow as it is, as like an extreme highlight, so just catching little top edges and things like that. But generally I just leave the underside of everything shaded. Now I'm going to mix some Citadel Kislev Flesh with the Bugman's Glow. I'm going to start highlighting that skin. So once again, think about where the light's going to be catching it. You're going to be highlighting those top surfaces where you'll be getting more light catching the skin to lighten those parts up. Final highlight for the skin now is going to be adding a little bit more Kislev Flesh to the Bugman's Glow mix that you've just used. We're going to do one final little highlight on the skin here. Again, thinking about where the light has been getting caught, you're probably going to do about 25% of the previous layer with this one. Just picking out those details and getting it so you've got that nice lighter shade where the light will be catching the skin more. Time for the Ahriman Blue. This is what we painted the skin of the demon with initially. It wasn't at the start of the video, but all we are going to do now is start re-adding the Ahriman Blue to the blue skin of the demon. It seems I've zoomed in well too close here. Apologies for that, it's a little bit out of the camera here. But you're going to be applying it in much the same way that you did with the Bugman's Glow on the flesh. Getting the Ahriman Blue on the sections that are going to be catching the light, and then leaving the shade in the recesses and on the undersides. Now I'm going to mix a little bit of white with the Citadel Ahriman Blue, and you're going to do the same again, adding the highlights to the areas which have the most light hitting them. Once again, we're going to add a little bit more white to the previous mix, and we're going to highlight that skin with a final edge highlight, using quite a thin brush here to try and get a few little striations on the muscles, and also add these highlights to the very top surface and top edges of each of those muscle sections and little bits, and that'll really bring out the detail in all those weird little warped bits of skin and muscle where it's bursting out of the cultist. With all the skin done, we're now going to start working on the tabard. So we're going to use Citadel Mephiston Red to reapply the colour back to it. You're mainly going to leave the shade in the recesses and use this to pick out all those raised areas. If they go into the recesses a little bit, I found some of the little details on this cloth a bit strange to paint. For some reason I couldn't get me head in to paint it how I usually do, but it doesn't matter too much because it is quite well shaded underneath the cultist there. Now it's Citadel Evil Sunz Scarlet. We're going to highlight the Mephiston red using this. This will bring all those little creases and details of the cloth out, and you'll start noticing them a lot more in the shaded areas underneath the cultist. Final highlight to the red is going to be Citadel Wild Rider red. I'm just going to do some really thin edge highlights on the sections of the red cloth just to make those stand out, give them a little bit more light. I have Citadel Rakarth Flesh now. We're going to reapply the colour back to all these bone parts, the hooves, any of the little bone claws and spurs that are sticking out, and also carefully, like really carefully do the hair as well. You'll be able to get all those strands of hair painted up with a really thin layer of Rakarth Flesh. Also those wicked long toenails too. To highlight those, we're going to start with Citadel Ushabti Bone. We're just going to do this on the bone spurs and the hooves and things. The hair will be coming back to a little bit later. But for now we're just going to apply the Ushabti Bone to all those little bone sections. Again, thinking about where the light's going to be catching them and trying to highlight those areas or any wide surface areas just to give that nice bone colour. Final colour for all those bone areas is going to be Citadel Screaming Skull. We're going to use this just to do the very final highlights on all of those bone sections and the teeth and those kind of areas. Mainly just to do like edge highlights and pick out the details, and this will give them a really nice highlight and make them all stand out quite nicely. You also use this to do some striations on the horns as well, and on those kind of scales going down the back of the neck. We use a tiny spot of Vallejo White now. Just going to use this to do the eyes on both the cultist and the demon. So always do the eyes dragging your brush away from the nose. That means you don't get a little spot on the nose as you're finishing off the brush stroke. So just get those eyes nice and white. What you can sometimes do though is overspill a little bit. Get that around the eyelid if you can. You can either go over that with a bit of shade or a bit of the previous colour that was around the eye. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Vallejo Black to put a spot in each of the cultist's eyes. I'll do make a mess of the left one, so we'll get a little bit more white, go over that, and then redo that spot on the eye. We're going back to Citadel Cantor Blue now to do the wings, so you want to be picking up all those highlights in the areas with flat surface around some of the holes and towards the bottom edge of those webbed sections of the wing. Didn't really enjoy painting the wings again. I thought they were a bit of a pain. I quite like the details to be a bit crisper, but obviously it's not going to have crisp details on the wings, but for some reason I just really didn't enjoy painting them. Going to mix a little bit of Vallejo white with the Kantor blue now and do the first layer of highlights on the wings. Now I'm picking out all the ridges and a little bit of the area on the flat areas too. But think about where the light is catching them, so you're going to have those highlights on the top edges of those ridges. You probably wouldn't have them where the wing curls underneath. That would remain shaded, so just those top edges really. And we can move on to the next colour once you've got all those done. Now I'm mixing a little bit more white with the previous mix. I'm just going to do one final highlight on each of these webbed sections. Again, as I say, you want to get the highlights so that they're near the top part of the wing where it bulges out and you're going to get a bit more light hitting it. But you can pick out all those details, the ridges, the edges around the holes in the wing too. You can do that bottom edge just to make that stand out against the darkness of the wing. We're going to work on the hair and the parchment on the arm there now. So we're going to use Rakarth Flesh and mix a little tiny bit of Vallejo white with it. I'm going to highlight the Rakarth Flesh that we painted back on when we started doing the horns and the claws and things like that. So I'm just picking out certain areas of the hair here and painting them with this layer, because I want to try and get the hair to not have the same colour all over. I want it to have like lighter parts at the top where it's catching more light, and then as the hair is going down the sides of the head, give them that kind of uneven lighting. And with the parchment, you're just going to be highlighting the top edges, sort of the top 50% of all those bits of Rakarth Flesh. Now I'm going to add a little more Vallejo white to the previous mix. I'm going to start doing the final highlights to the parchment, and then when you're doing the hair, I added the highlights to different sections of the hair to what I'd put the previous layer on, and that just gave the hair that kind of look of where it's reflecting light in different parts and not in others, where it's catching the shade. Working on the gold now, we're going to return to Citadel Retribute armour. We're just going to do little bits of gold back on the stars. You've got the one on the front, or on the side rather. You can do the reverse of it. You've also got the one on the back too. So leaving the shade in the recesses, you want to be picking out the areas that be catching more light. The highlights will show the light a little bit more. So I'm going to use Citadel Liberator Gold just to do the highlights on these parts. So you're thinking about the light catching it from above, where you're going to get those reflections, and then picking out those details with the Liberator Gold. Last colour we're going to use on the gold is mixing a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Chrome with the Liberator Gold. We're just going to use this to do edge highlights on the top edges of the stars, just to make those really stand out. Going to return to Citadel Iron Hand Steel here. Just do a little bit on the spike coming out the back of the arm. Reapply some colour to those chains, and also the studs on the front of the arm and the front of the tabard too. So next up, we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Carroburg Crimson, and I'm going to use this to just do a little bit of blood splattering on the miniature. Also going to use it to do the eyes of the demon. And what I'm doing here is I'm just putting the Carroburg Crimson around the edges of the eyes, so it's got that white spot in the middle and the red around the outside. I'm using this now to stain the hair, as when you get lots of blood in hair and it does get that kind of matted and dark look to it. Doing a bit of blood around the horns as well, around the spike there, and then basically around all the edges where the demons burst through the skin. I'm going to use Blood for the Blood God by Citadel here and do the same again. I'm going to have some blood running down from the mouth, the nose and the eyes. Then where you've got those horns coming out, having some running down the side of the face. And around each of those areas where it is bursting out and you've got those thin sections of skin, having some running down the hands, running down the feet too. Didn't go too overboard because I wasn't sure what the effect would be of having blood on the demon, but I did gore up the skin of the cultist a little bit there. So the final colour we're going to use is Citadel Pink Horror. This is just to apply a little bit of colour back to the tongue of the demon. So I'm basically kind of like stippling that back on, just doing little spots of colour rather than smooth brush strokes, just to give that rough and textured look. This is the finished miniature. Love the contrast of that vivid blue against the skin tone of the cultist. It really does stand out quite well. It's great fun to paint, other than those wings. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much. If you like the channel and you enjoy the content and you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.